chained to this idea of the meds keeping them alive, but it's actually they're killing them. They're hurting their liver and kidneys and their hearts. Several of the people I know have died of AIDS, have died of heart attacks. They call it complications from AIDS. It's complications from AIDS medicines. You can walk through West Hollywood and you can point out, you can see from the shrunken cheeks and the swollen bellies and the looks on people, you can see who's on the drugs.
I looked at my face a couple of years ago and I had this like gaunt look going on, and it became so pronounced that I would have a fold of skin here, and I noticed it, and it bothered me to the point where I went to consult with plastic surgeons as to I didn't ask what was going on. Just, you know, I just, at the time I thought it was, I was just aging really rapidly.
The other thing that I think the drugs could cause is some facial atrophy. Here were the fat pads on the cheek waste away. I'm not sure if it's caused by the drug or if just by getting older, but I have a feeling that it's caused by the drug. We injected collagen, but then that was expensive, and then we did another procedure where we put some human tissue which came from cadavers, and it would just try to straighten it out. And I have little bumps on my back, little tiny things, but you know, there's another syndrome where it gets redistributed on the back, and that makes me think we don't know what the long-term effects are. I feel like a human guinea pig.
And there's no question that these drugs have side effects. AZT was certainly not a panacea, but it's very clear that people, especially taking combination therapies, are doing well, and those are people who are taking the medications.
From scientific meetings, from these conferences, from my personal contacts with people in the field, I can tell you that I've found no evidence anywhere that people live longer, better lives who take these anti-HIV drugs, these protease inhibitors, either alone or in cocktails, as compared to a similar group of HIV positive people who do not take these drugs. So I do not know where the evidence is for the claims that you see in the New York Times or in the CNN or wherever you see it, that people are living longer, better lives as a consequence of taking these drugs.
I'm not saying that drugs couldn't facilitate death or you know, morbidity. I'm sure that can happen, and people have had horrible side effects from some of these drugs. But to assume that it is the drugs that are killing people and not AIDS, I think is again, it's just not, it's not been proven out.
Infectious diseases are really very simple. It ain't rocket science. You know, you've got a bug, you've got to poison the bug, it's destroying the body. So I think it's very, very unlikely that we'll successfully treat HIV without antiviral drugs. And it does seem to me a bit of a waste of time to try.
If you think about it, you put in a person making hundreds of thousands of new T cells every minute, an inhibitor of DNA synthesis, because the virus needs DNA to be replicated. But the virus is 10 kilobases and the human cell is 1,000,000 kilobases. You're shooting with nuclear weapons at bunnies. Yes, you probably knock out a few bunnies, but the forest doesn't look very good after your hunt is over.
I just want to read 4 things that you can find on the back of these drug ads, where the front has handsome tan men climbing up mountains in short shorts and, you know, smiling women and all this stuff. On the back it says stuff like, at this time there is no evidence that Zyogin will help you live longer or have fewer of the medical problems associated with AIDS. It is not yet known whether Crixivan will extend your life or reduce your chances of getting illnesses associated with HIV. At present, there are no results, none, from controlled clinical trials evaluating the effects of Viramune on the incidence of opportunistic infections or survival. And finally, there's one that simply says, there have been no clinical trials conducted with Combivir. If these drugs were showing health benefits, which has not appeared in the form of long-term controlled scientific studies published in the medical literature, the drug companies would be putting the good news on the front page instead of putting these disclaimers on the back page. I can pull up scientific studies left and right that have been condemning these popular drugs now for more than a year. But by the time it filters down to the people who believe they need them, for many of them, it's too late.
You know, you'll put up with this kind of stuff because you think that you've got to do it. You think you've got to take these drugs. I mean, because otherwise you're going to die. And so you'll limp around and you'll put up with the pins and needles in your feet, and you'll think, you know, that, oh, well, my belly's all bloated out, and it feels all like I'm, you know, like I've eaten 2 watermelons, but it's, you know, it's better than the alternative. And it's like, I don't know, you know, what is the alternative?
Did you ever question what you were being told about your diagnosis?
No.
Hey, I'm Christine Majori. I'm convinced it's wrong to encourage HIV testing and to administer death sentences to people who test positive. The HIV test is well documented to cross-react with numerous non-HIV antibodies that can be found in normal, healthy people. They read these as HIV antibodies and give a positive test result. Cold, the flu, flu shots, hepatitis, herpes, rheumatoid arthritis, other immunizations, and pregnancy can read as HIV positive on these tests. Pregnant women who test positive are told they have to take this, AZT, or abort. That's an actual AZT label. AZT is a chemotherapy. It's a known carcinogen and works by destroying DNA chains as they're forming in the body. It causes severe anemia, so severe people need blood transfusions. It causes muscle wasting, neuropathy, diarrhea, dementia, spontaneous abortion, fetal deformities, and lymphoma. As we meet here today, there are parents across the country who risk losing their children to state custody for their refusal to give their children AZT. Next week in Eugene, Oregon, the parents of an HIV-negative baby are being charged with negligence and intent to harm for objecting to orders to give their baby AZT. This baby's father is HIV negative, his sister is HIV negative, and he's HIV negative. But since his mother came up positive on an HIV antibody test, the state says that they must give this HIV negative baby AZT, and she cannot breastfeed him. This isn't public health policy, this is madness.
Our pediatrician came to take a look at him, and she gave him a little checkout and said he looked great. He apparently was very healthy, and all his vitals were working right, and everything was good. He looked like a good, strong, healthy baby. But would we consider a visit from this infectious diseases pediatrician? She came by and looked at Felix and also agreed that he was a very healthy-looking baby, looked fine, but urged me to stop breastfeeding right away and to start the AZT treatment for him. That was really the best thing to do in this case. So we talked with her for a little while about why we had decided not to, and that, you know, we really had based our decision on a lot of research and a lot of soul searching and, you know, just kind of the basic information that we had about our own health and the health of my daughter and especially my health. She was just rather strident and informed me that she would be going to the ethics board of the hospital and would be consulting with the hospital's attorney. The petitioner from juvenile court walked in my room with a Eugene police officer, a police officer with the gun and the holster and their radio and the little book and the whole uniform and everything. Basically, I was told that, you know, I really needed to stop breastfeeding right away, and I really needed to start giving Felix the AZT right away. And at this point, I was in a panic, and so, you know, I hit the buzzer, told the nurses to please come in now and bring the formula bottles and the bottles. And I would start it right then. So that's what we did. But it didn't make any difference because we were already caught in the process. Didn't make any difference. So I realized then, I read the paper, that my son was no longer in my custody, in my legal custody, and that he was, as of that moment, under protective custody of the state of Oregon. And that they would leave him with me, but with those kind of orders and that kind of paper in your hand, you realize that, you know, nothing is certain. I would put it in a syringe without a needle on it, and I'd put this little teeny tiny tube on the end of the syringe, and then I would tape the tube, the end of the tube, onto my finger, and then I would squeeze the syringe and I'd watch that medicine go down the tube until it got right to the end. And then I would put that finger in my baby's mouth and he would start to suck. And then I would have to squeeze that syringe until it was all the way down. Then there was still some left in the tube, so I'd have to take the syringe off the tube and then draw up some formula in that syringe and reattach it to the tube and then push the formula through so that he would get all the 0.65 milliliters of AZT.
3 months into the pregnancy, they tested me. I came up positive. We fought them, saying we didn't believe it, put them off, we don't want the drugs for 2 months, and we agreed to start the AZT 5 months into the pregnancy. And that's when they took us down. They put us in an office. We had these stack of papers, and we just signed it all.
She was doing seizures for a while.
Yeah, she did some
Or
seizures.
she'd be sitting there and her face would just kind of tighten up, and
And
then
her
snapped
eyes would
out
roll
of it.
back
And her
in
eyes
her
would
head.
roll. And then she, that one time on the couch, we came out and she was convulsing.
Right.
And we called the 911. She had a lot of fever-related seizures. She's been very, very, very hard to raise. And I know that she was poisoned. She's a different child, and it's everybody, a lot of people know. Rachel is going to lead Rachel's life.
Right.
And Rachel physically seems to be fine.
Who is that?
She can't say 1, 2, 3. She can't say one. You can't. No, she can't count to 3, and she can't say ABC, and she can't say her name, and she can't tell you how old she is. And sometimes in her head, I mean, she wakes up in the middle like crying sometimes, and like in pain, just screaming, and it's hard to see what's going on with her, and it really hurts me. And I feel somewhat responsible because I let those doctors give her those drugs.
And I don't think that Paul and I can really say that there's anything specifically wrong with her, because I don't think anybody can really tell.
Rachel's different.
She's just different.
Some of the concerns that I guess the dissident side raises is that AZT is contraindicated for everyone except pregnant women, children, and people in third world countries. How does that work? What's your response to that?
Well, that's an absolutely ridiculous position. It's totally false. We give AZT all the time to patients with HIV disease.
In monotherapy?
No, we don't use monotherapy ever. We use AZT as part of a combination regimen. But let me ask you something. Do you believe that HIV causes AIDS?
That's the general position. I mean, that seems to be the prevailing wisdom on it.
Do you personally believe that HIV causes AIDS?
I don't have enough information either way, personally.
Are you one of the dissidents?
A dissident? No.
How can you say you don't have enough information if you're doing a documentary on this topic?
I'm forming an opinion based on the information that I gather.
Honestly, Robin, if you're at this meeting, you should have had an opinion formed before coming here.
That's not necessarily true. That's not necessarily true. I mean, I can see that you're a man who stands powerfully behind that idea.
I stand powerfully and passionately behind that idea. And I'm concerned that if you are someone who is going to waffle on this topic, that you will attempt to edit my remarks in a way that will make me look foolish.
I will not do that. I'm not out to take anyone's dignity or anything. I'm trying to put together a series of interviews that bring enlightenment to the subject. That's it.
As far as I'm concerned, and I hope this view is adequately represented, those who attempt to dispel the notion that HIV is the cause of AIDS are perpetrators of death. And I would very much, for one, like to see the Constitution of the United States and similar countries have some means in place that we can charge people who are responsible for endangering public health with charges of endangerment and bring them up on trial. I think that people like Peter Duisberg belong in jail.
We don't say Toyotas and Mercedes shouldn't be sold here because we want to sell General Motors. But when it comes to science, we act in America like the Pope acts in Rome. There's only one truth and only one direction to march in.
One of the distinguishing features of modern science is skepticism, the spirit to challenge other people's work, the spirit to challenge your own work. And I fear that this spirit is disappearing, in particular in the case of HIV and AIDS. Anybody that speaks up against or challenges some of the entrenched paradigms or principles is not only not welcome, but they are strongly criticized to the point of being called names: bigots, homophobes, baby killers, flat earthers, Holocaust deniers. Certainly, this would indicate to me that the spirit of skepticism, the spirit of challenge, the spirit of scientific debate in this field is virtually completely gone.
Someone who would perpetrate the notion that HIV is not the cause of AIDS is perhaps motivated by sentiments of pure evil, that such a person may perhaps really want millions of people in Africa and elsewhere to become infected by this virus and go on to die of it. And who knows, maybe there's a hidden agenda behind the thoughts of a madman. Maybe all psychopaths everywhere have ways of getting their views across that are sometimes camouflaged in subterfuge. But I suggest to you that Peter Duesberg is probably the closest thing we have in this world to a scientific psychopath.
There are a lot of other scientists that raise the challenges that he raises.
And now the interview's finished. Thanks.
I had all the students I wanted, I had all the lab space I needed, I got all the grants awarded, I was elected in the National Academy, I became California Scientist of the Year, all my papers were published. I could do no wrong almost, professionally that is, until I started questioning the claim that HIV, or the hypothesis that HIV is the cause of AIDS. Then everything changed.
The disease that is now known as malaria was thought up until the middle of the 19th century to be something caused by organisms in the air, hence the term malaria. I mean, the French thought that it was a disease of lethargy and of fever caused by being in tropical climates because there was something in the air. It was not till the middle of the 19th century that they discovered that malaria had nothing to do with the air, but it was caused by the bite of the Anopheles mosquito. That's the vector for malaria. So, you know, the causation for disease, the causation for illness, for a number of other natural phenomenon in astronomy and microbiology is always something that's open for robust and vigorous dispute and debate, and AIDS is no different.
It has been something of a marvel to me how colleagues in the business, who normally would be the first to challenge blatantly exaggerated claims that come from organizations like UNAIDS and the WHO and some of these other major organizations, they're completely uncritically accepted and uncritically reported. And this is harmful because it's helped, every time these agencies feel that concern about AIDS is beginning to die away in the countries where it's a diminishing problem, they issue new reports with new projections and new exaggerated claims to try to keep the funds flowing and keep the concern there. And I can understand this from one perspective, that because they have the mindset that this is such a terrible epidemic, and because they've closed their minds to other ways of thinking, they feel that they're justified in doing this. But it's a dangerous way of behaving, and it's helped to distort the science and maintain some illusory aspects of this for much longer than need have been the case.
I don't think most people got involved in it, really looked at it and said, I don't think this is really true, but I won't get into it anyhow. It wasn't like that. It was like they were never questioning it because it was the easy way to go. You follow, I mean, if somebody's paying you $150,000 a year for working on something, you don't have to be questioning whether that's useful every day because it's useful to you. I mean, if you're trying to work your way up in IBM, you don't immediately go to the chairman of the company and say, does this company actually do what it says it does? I mean, are we really for real? I mean, you don't do that, right? So the fact that everybody that works for IBM believes in IBM as a company does not say that IBM really does what it says it does. It just says, well, of course, everybody that works for IBM kind of toes the line, right? So everybody in the field of AIDS works for AIDS in a way. I mean, you can think of it as a big corporation that's completely funded by the federal government. It's a big company. It's a big organization which has a pecking order. Not quite as distinct as some companies, but not as indistinct as you might think. It is not a bunch, it's not 30,000 independent scientists working in their own labs with their own ideas. See, so to say that they all go for it, it just says, well, they all belong to the club, don't they? They're all being paid out of the same coffer, and they're not going to be paid if they don't go for it. So you can't, the only way to resolve this for yourself is to say, I guess I'm going to have to learn a little about it.
I feel like I'm waking up from some kind of 5-year sleep in which I agreed to do something that I didn't really believe in or want to do, but I did out of fear and really a kind of pressure.
I think that the basic paradigm that we all function under with HIV and AIDS is one of fear. It's assumed that you're infected and that you have a death sentence. It's assumed that if you don't follow doctor's orders, you're going to get sick and die. There are many, many people who are not following doctor's orders and who are doing quite well. In fact, many of them I see daily, and they seem to be doing better than the people who are following doctor's orders.
I hope HIV doesn't cause AIDS, you know, and looking at all these questions and all these unanswered questions, I'm getting more and more to believe that HIV doesn't cause AIDS. And if this should turn out to be the case, then I can live a free life, you know, free from fear, free from the terror that has been subjected on me in the last 10 years.
For me, the other side of AIDS is learning to be a critical thinker, to really make decisions for myself rather than let society or a doctor or a pharmaceutical company tell me what's best for me. To really consider all my options and to live based on what feels right in my heart. To not make decisions based on fear and death, but to make decisions based on life.
The reality seems to confirm me every single year. We have never cured one single AIDS patient. We have never been able to predict the epidemic. It was said to be exploding in the general population. It hasn't. Prostitutes were supposed to be getting it. Doctors were supposed to be getting it because they're in the front lines of the viral attack. Scientists working with HIV were said to die from AIDS. That hasn't happened. A vaccine was supposed to be found. We have no vaccine. Well, what more can you ask for for the flawed hypothesis? It fails every year. Another one cannot be considered in this country.
The evidence that I have seen shows me nothing of the sort to resemble anything approaching a scientific basis of evidence that what's called AIDS is caused by a viral entity or by a retrovirus, whatever the initials are, HIV, IHV, VIH, you can scramble them any way you like. The cause and cure for AIDS is as near at hand as an alternative hypothesis.
Questioning is healthy. Questioning is what leads to answers. Science, research, investigation of any kind begins with questions. And when we restrict where those questions can go, who can ask them, and under what circumstances, we're restricting progress and knowledge. And when we're looking for answers to a problem that is unresolved, that has caused tremendous human suffering on many levels, lives being lost, lives being forever changed, you know, people commit suicide, have abortions, break up relationships, give up careers, and all kinds of things based on the idea that HIV causes AIDS, we have the right to question this. Questioning is a good thing, and we should be joining hands. There shouldn't be this my side, your side. We should be joining hands, the so-called mainstream AIDS organizations with the so-called alternative AIDS organizations like ours, in an effort to explain the anomalies, to fill in the gaping holes in our knowledge, and to embrace what we don't understand in order to come to some answers and solutions that can truly be of help to people.
Oh. lab. Can't seem to lose my baby flap. Good boy swallows all the hill, building up a mountain pill by pill. Choke, spirit choke, a little smoke and a little poke. Step right up to the eye scan, let's all slide down the swollen gland. Living in the white man's world, having straight hair.